It was an unusually quiet evening as I unlocked the door to my small apartment. The air was cold, and I could feel the exhaustion of the day weighing heavily on my shoulders. All I wanted was to take a warm shower and unwind. But as I stepped inside, something immediately felt off. The silence was too complete, too unnatural, as if the space was holding its breath. I tossed my bag on the counter and headed to the kitchen, but stopped mid-step. Wet footprints. Bare, small, and unmistakably fresh. They trailed from the back door toward the bathroom. My heart raced. Someone was inside. I grabbed the nearest object I could use as a weapon, an umbrella of all things, and crept cautiously toward the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear faint, shallow breathing. With every step closer, my nerves tightened. Pushing the door open slowly, I saw her. A girl, young, maybe early 20s, huddled in the corner of the shower. Her clothes were soaked, her hair clinging to her face. She looked up at me with wide, fearful eyes, and I froze.
"Who are you?
"What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sound firm, though my voice shook. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled her knees closer to her chest, shivering visibly. "Please don't call anyone," she finally whispered. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, but there was something in her tone that stopped me from immediately dialing the police. I took a deep breath, lowering the umbrella. "I'm not going to hurt you, but you need to explain what's going on." She hesitated, as if weighing her options, then spoke again. I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked, and she looked away, her face pale and streaked with exhaustion. "I just needed a place to hide. Just for a little while." It was hard to tell if she was telling the truth or if this was some elaborate setup, but something about her vulnerability struck a chord in me. She looked like someone who hadn't slept or eaten in days. "Okay," I said cautiously. "Come out of there. You're going to catch pneumonia if you stay like that." She didn't move at first, so I softened my tone. "I'll get you a towel. And maybe something to eat." That seemed to do the trick. Slowly, she stood, her movements hesitant, as if afraid I'd lash out at any moment. I handed her a towel from the rack and backed away, giving her space to step out of the shower. She wrapped the towel tightly around herself, still shaking. I gestured toward the kitchen.
"Sit down."
"I'll make some tea." As I prepared something warm, I couldn't stop glancing at her.
"Who is she?"
What was she running from? I had so many questions, but I decided to hold them back for now. Whoever she was clearly in trouble. And for reasons I couldn't fully understand, I couldn't bring myself to turn her away. She sat at the edge of the couch, clutching the mug of tea like it was her lifeline. Her eyes darted around the room, like she was afraid someone might burst through the door at any moment. I waited, giving her space, but the silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, I decided to break it. "What's your name?" I asked gently, keeping my voice low. She hesitated, as if debating whether to answer. "Mia," she said quietly, not meeting my gaze. "Okay, Mia," I said, sitting down across from her. "Can you tell me what's going on? Why were you hiding in my showers?" Her fingers tightened around the mug, her knuckles turning white. She took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse to say anything. But then she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was trying to get away," she said. "From him." I didn't need to ask who him was. The way her voice trembled, the way her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger, it was clear. He wasn't who I thought he was," she continued. "At first he was so kind, so sweet. I thought I'd finally found someone who cared about me. But it was all a lie. It didn't take long for things to change. He became controlling, possessive, and then it got worse." She paused, her lips trembling as she fought to keep her composure. I stayed quiet, letting her speak at her own pace. "He'd always apologize afterward," she said, her voice breaking. "He'd say it was my fault, that I made him do it. And I believed him for a long time. But last night, her voice trailed off, and she swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. Last night, I realized if I didn't leave, I wouldn't survive." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Her words were raw, filled with pain, and I didn't know what to say. It was clear she'd been through more than I could imagine. "Why my house?" I asked after a moment. She managed a weak smile. "Your back door was unlocked." I didn't think. I just ran and kept running until I couldn't anymore. "When I saw your place, it just felt like somewhere safe." There was something heartbreaking about how she said that, like the idea of safety was foreign to her. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. "I should call someone," I said, though I didn't move. "The police or a shelter. Someone who can help." Her head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes.
No, please.
I can't. I can't risk him finding me. He has people. He'll know if I go to the police." Her fear was palpable, and I felt my resolve falter. Against my better judgment, I nodded slowly. "All right.
You can stay here tonight.
But tomorrow, we'll figure something out. You can't keep running forever." She looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the small apartment. I woke up to the faint sound of clinking dishes coming from the kitchen. For a moment, I forgot the events of the previous night, but then it all came back: the footprints, the fear in Mia's eyes, and her whispered confessions. I walked into the kitchen to find Mia standing by the stove, frying eggs in one of my old pans. She looked different in the light of day, less like the scared girl from last night and more like someone trying to piece themselves back together. She turned when she heard me, offering a hesitant smile. "Good morning," she said softly. I thought I'd make breakfast as a thank you." It was a small gesture, but it caught me off guard. For someone who had been so guarded, it felt like her way of showing trust. I nodded, accepting her silent olive branch. "Smells good," I said, pulling out a chair at the table. We ate in relative silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a fragile peace that I wasn't sure I wanted to break. But as Mia cleared the plates, something caught my eye: her phone, left on the counter. It wasn't curiosity that made me reach for it.
It was instinct.
A part of me still felt like I didn't have the full picture. And when I unlocked the screen, she hadn't even bothered to set a passcode. I saw why. Messages.
Dozens of them.
Some pleading, others angry. All from the same number. "You can't hide forever. You'll regret this. Come back before it's too late." My stomach sank as I scrolled further, realizing these weren't just messages from an abusive ex. They were threats. But then I saw something else: messages she had sent. They painted a different picture. "I don't know if I can do this. What if he finds me?" It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I stared at the screen, the knot in my stomach twisting tighter. It wasn't just that Mia had lied or kept things from me. It was that I suddenly couldn't tell who she really was or what she was running from. When she came back into the kitchen, she froze, her eyes darting to the phone in my hand. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, holding up the phone. "What's really going on, Mia? Who are you running from? And why does it feel like you're not telling me the whole stories?" Her face crumpled, the calm facade she'd been holding on to shattering in an instant. "I didn't want you to get involved," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want you to know because it's not just him. It's me. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people, and now they're after me." I felt a wave of anger and confusion rise in me. "So, what? You thought you'd just hide here and hope it all went away? Did you ever think about what that would mean for me?" Tears welled in her eyes, and she shook her head. "I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this.
I swear.
I just didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what to believe anymore." The girl who had seemed so vulnerable, so in need of help. Was she just using me? Or was she as much a victim as she claimed? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear: the fragile trust between us had been broken. And I wasn't sure if it could be fixed. The weight of her words lingered in the room, heavy and suffocating. I didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity, letting the silence press down on both of us. Mia stood there, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, like she was trying to hold the pieces together. But I couldn't ignore the storm of questions raging in my mind. Finally, I spoke, my voice quieter than I expected. Mia, I need the truth. All of it. Right now. She hesitated, biting her lip as if she was still debating how much to reveal. But then something shifted in her expression. Resignation, maybe. All right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll tell you everything. She sank into the chair across from me, her gaze fixed on the table. I wasn't just running from him. I got involved with the wrong people. He wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. He was involved in things I didn't understand at first. Money, deals, people getting hurt. And she paused, her voice faltering. I tried to leave when I realized, but by then, I'd already seen too much. They don't let people walk away. Her words sent a chill down my spine. So, you're saying they're after you too? She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I thought if I could just disappear, I'd be safe. But I didn't think it through. I didn't have a plan, and then I ended up here. I leaned back, trying to process everything. The situation was so much bigger than I had anticipated. It wasn't just about helping someone in trouble, it was about risking my own safety in the process. Mia, you can't stay here. It's not safe for either of us, I said finally. She looked up at me, panic flashing across her face. Please, I have nowhere else to go. I know I've put you in danger, but I didn't mean to. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. I felt a pang of guilt despite everything. She was terrified, broken, and clearly out of options. But she was right. Helping her had already pulled me into something far more dangerous than I'd signed up for. I can't let you stay, I repeated, softer this time. But I'm not going to just throw you out. We'll figure something out. There are people who can help, shelters, organizations. They'll know what to do. She shook her head, her voice muffled. You don't understand. They'll find me. No matter where I go, they'll find me. For a moment, I considered telling her to leave anyway, to cut my losses and walk away. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not after everything she'd been through. Instead, I made a decision I wasn't sure I'd ever stop questioning. All right, I said, standing up. You can't stay here, but I'll help you get somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find you. She lifted her head, her tear-streaked face filled with a fragile kind of hope. You do that? After everything? I nodded, though I wasn't sure why. Yeah, but after this, you're on your own. I can't keep putting myself in danger for someone I barely know. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I made calls, pulled together resources, and arranged for her to meet with someone I trusted, a friend who worked with people in crisis. By evening, everything was set. When it was time for her to leave, she stood by the door, her bag slung over her shoulder. Thank you, she said, her voice soft. For everything. I'll never forget what you did for me. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. As the door closed behind her, the apartment felt emptier than it had in a long time. But as I sat there in the quiet, I realized something. Helping her might have been a risk, but it was also the right thing to do. Sometimes the right thing isn't easy. And sometimes it means letting go.